Namaste, DDs. My name is Sherry Sutton, and I am your marketing mentor. I just noticed that we're not going live on all of the places. So hold on, I will be right back. Okay, we're here. All right, hold on. I'm going to go live on the Instagram. Sorry about that delay. Hey everybody, my name is Sherry Sutton. I am your marketing mentor and the founder of the DD Marketing Collective. This is our weekly live broadcast where I share with you all different types of ways to make marketing magic in your small business. So today we're going to talk about Facebook versus LinkedIn. So this is one of the most common questions for people who know they need to do social media, but they're not quite sure which one is right for their business. And it really depends on your individual business and the types of people that you're selling to and the types of products that you're selling to. So I wanted to spend a few minutes kind of talking about that. If you guys are watching this on Instagram, I have this cool handout. You can see it on the slides if you are watching this on any of the other channels, but they don't let me see your slides on Instagram. So direct message me. I'm actually happy to send you a copy of this. It's got a kind of a cool chart that we're going to be going over about the pros and cons of each. So everybody else, you can see it on the screen. All right, let's dive in. Hold on, I need to go to the next slide. All right. Oh, you might not be able to see that very well. Let's see if I can make it bigger. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and cons of Facebook versus LinkedIn. First off, be sure that social media is indeed the right place to market your business. Sometimes it's not. I know that sounds crazy, especially in today's day and age, but it's not always the best way to market your business. So what you want to do is make sure that no matter what you do, you look at who your target audience is, what products you're selling, and then you can say, okay, yes, this is where those people hang out. This is where those people go to look for information about products and services like mine. And therefore, it makes sense for me to be marketing in those places. You have to ask yourself that first before you just assume that you need to be on any of these platforms or really doing any kind of marketing. So you want to know, hey, where does my client hang out? Is this a place where they go to get information on these types of products? And if so, then great, go for it. Let's do it. So you know that you want to do social media. You know that your target audience goes to social media as a place to look for your information, but you're not sure between Facebook and LinkedIn. So I want to spend a few minutes. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each platform, and then it's up to you to decide. So Facebook. If you didn't know, Facebook is now owned by a company that used to be called Facebook. It's called Meta, and they own both Facebook and Instagram. So that's why you're able to share so easily across the two platforms. So some of the pros of being on Facebook for your business, there's a couple things. One is there's groups. Groups are a really great way to engage with people online. And we'll talk about this in a minute. LinkedIn doesn't have groups in the same kind of a way as Facebook. Facebook groups are getting less and less attention from the algorithm over time. Facebook has realized that those groups are places where people sell things and they want you to buy ads, right? So any place where you're trying to sell for free without paying for an ad, Facebook and Meta doesn't like that, right? Because they're there to make money, which I get, right? We're all here to make money. But Facebook groups are getting harder and harder to get engagement on. They're really great if you have a product or service that requires not only you to share information, but for people to communicate back and forth. So Facebook is great and Facebook groups are great if you have a product line where people talk back and forth. I'll give you a good example. So I just came out of a networking meeting. It's called Moms Out Marketing. It's a fantastic group based here in North Texas. And that is a great opportunity to create a group. So we have our own Facebook group, and in that group, people talk and ask each other advice, ask each other guidance. Hey guys, how do you do this? How do you do that? That type of thing. Because that business is designed around networking and people talking back and forth, a group is a great thing to do. So if you've got that type of a business, Facebook is probably your best choice, and a Facebook group's a great choice. If you have created a group and all you're really doing is using it as a chance to sell to what you think is a captive audience, that's great. It probably used to work. It's probably not working anymore. As I mentioned earlier, Facebook is sort of limiting how those things are seen in the algorithm over time. So you can do one of two things, right? One is get your Facebook group engaged again by doing more two-way conversation, making it more into a community versus a place where you sell specifically to your target audience, or start posting more on your personal page, and that's really going to help. And we talk about that in lots of other presentations. I'm not going to go into that too much more now. So that's one of the biggest pros about Facebook. One of the other ones, and this is true of both Facebook and LinkedIn, is this. When you go to a network meeting, what is the first thing that people do after they meet you in a networking meeting? Well, they say, okay, I'm going to go look this person up online, right? They might go to your website, like they might Google you. More often than not, they're going to go to one of their two favorite platforms to stalk people, right? Facebook or LinkedIn. So this is where knowing your audience really comes in, because you're going to want to look at your target audience and say, okay, where do they hang out the most, right? Are they hanging out on Facebook the most, or are they hanging out on LinkedIn the most? I could tell you, like for me and for my audience, they're on Facebook, right? So when I meet somebody at a networking event, I will go friend them on Facebook so that we are then connected there. But there are a lot of businesses where LinkedIn is really where they go, right? Especially when you're selling business to business. We'll talk about this a little bit in a few minutes. But when you're selling business to business, you really want to make sure LinkedIn is kind of the way to go, because those folks, people who, let's say you're an HR director at a company and you're trying to sell into HR directors, those folks, they tend to, when you're in the corporate world, have a little bit more of a distance between personal life and business life, where folks like me who have personal brands, who are solopreneurs, we blur those lines a lot more. And so Facebook is where we tend to hang out a little bit more. So that's kind of the difference. You want to know where your folks hang out so that they can look you up online. Here's one of the tips I have for you. Facebook business pages, as well as LinkedIn business pages, just don't do very well in the algorithm. As I mentioned earlier, Facebook and LinkedIn, they want you to sell ads. They want you to buy ads rather, right? Because that's how they make revenue. So if they know you're selling for free on your business pages, they generally just won't show those very high in the algorithm. So that means a lot of people won't see them. So what you want to do is make sure that when someone connects with you, right, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on Facebook, it's very easy for them to get to your business page to learn more about you. So you want to make sure, whether it's on your main page of Facebook or on your main page of LinkedIn, that you link to your company page, whether it's on Facebook or on LinkedIn. So you want to keep that page updated at least enough so that they can get a sense of what you do, right? Because they might not be able to actually go and see all of your posts right away, or they might not want to look at your posts right away. I feel like that's a little hard to do usability wise on LinkedIn than it is on Facebook. So you want to make sure that you have a business page so that when you meet somebody in a networking event or they hear about you, they follow up with you, right? They get to know by friending you on Facebook or connecting with you on LinkedIn, that they can then very easily go to your business page and learn more about your business. That is incredibly important. However, keep in mind, those business pages are not going to bring you a lot of business in and of themselves. They'll generally come to those business pages from meeting you as an individual. So if that makes sense. Okay, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, the other pro for Facebook. So we're talking about pros for Facebook. We talked about groups, which are great for collaboration. We talked about, for many individuals, Facebook is the first place you'll go after networking. Sometimes it's LinkedIn, so you have to know which. The next thing that I think is a real pro for Facebook is that that community is very easy to buy ads on. So Meta has made it very easy to buy ads or boost posts either on Facebook or on Instagram. And because they're owned by the same company, it's very easy to be able to create ads in both places. Their user interface, it takes a little bit of getting used to if you want to run ads, but it's not super challenging. And we're going to talk about that and how it differs from LinkedIn here in a few minutes. So that's one of the other big pros. The other big pro for Facebook is it shares back and forth from Instagram. So the great thing is, I mentioned you want to have a business page on Facebook. What you can do is get a great Instagram feed going. You can automatically share that content on your Facebook business page so that it's updated. So when you meet people and they stalk you and they go to your business page from the main page of Facebook, they can see your business page. So when you can keep that updated just by doing what you're already doing on Instagram. So I love the fact that those can kind of cross-pollinate one another. It goes both ways, actually. So you can post on Facebook and it'll automatically post on Instagram. So that collaboration, the ability to share multiple places is awesome because we are very busy entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and don't have time to post in all the places. So those are a couple of the pros. Here's a few cons when it comes to Facebook. The biggest one is one that I already talked about, which is our business pages don't get shown very frequently. And this is true both on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So it's just one of those things. You can get really mad about it and you can try really hard. It's probably not going to work very well. My best advice is to do a really great Instagram feed where you're using reels, you're doing hashtags to try to bring in a new audience there. Automatically share that content with your Facebook business page so that there's something there, but know that you're not going to get a ton of traffic on that page. So that's the biggest con I see from a Facebook perspective. Now I want to share with you some data on exactly who is on Facebook. This data is a little bit old. Most of these, like this comes from Pew, which is like, the place where all the fancy statisticians and nerds like me go to make sure we know exactly who we're talking to. Because sometimes it's got to be real good data, right? Sometimes we get data that's a little mushy, right? And so Pew is one of the best places to go. So as of late last year, here are the people who were on Facebook. So they are 18 to 54. Our largest population is actually 25 to 34, which I find kind of interesting. I think that's skewing up in my opinion and in my experience, but we'll see when the next round of research comes out. It is the main platform for people who are 65 and over. So if that is your target audience, Facebook is definitely the way to go. One interesting thing about Facebook is it is evenly split across all of the different income ranges. So whether you've got a lower income range or all the way up to a high income range, Facebook is a great place for you. So again, this all comes back to knowing who your target audience is, because once you know who your target audience is, then you can say, okay, which of these platforms is right for me based on where these people hang out, because they might not be where you think that they are, right? So it's a good cross section of the population from that perspective, from an income perspective, as well as from an education perspective, though it does tend to be slightly more people with a college education. So that's who's hanging out on Facebook. For me, the best people to be on Facebook are businesses that are collaborative based, right? So people who are creating communities, people who are creating conversation between multiple people. Having the groups functionality on Facebook is amazing from that perspective. The other people who do really, really well on Facebook are individuals who are selling to other individuals. So, for me, right, even though I'm selling a service to businesses, they're generally solopreneurs. So I'm an individual selling to individuals, right? Facebook is the best place for things like health coaches selling to individuals, weight loss coaches, life coaches, realtors, all of those folks, when you're trying to connect with an individual with your marketing, Facebook is definitely the place to go. All right, let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn. So pros and cons of LinkedIn. So a few of the pros of LinkedIn, just like Facebook, for many, many people, LinkedIn is the first place that they go to when they want to connect with you after meeting you at an event or hearing about you from someone else. So you want to make sure that you're present, right? You want to also make sure that you've got lots of business information easily accessible through your platform. So again, going back to understanding your audience is real important here, because if your audience is someone who goes to LinkedIn first, you're going to want to make sure that you're there. And for people who are in the business world, in the what I call the corporate world versus being an entrepreneur, that is where most of those folks hang out, is on LinkedIn, as well as it's kind of broken out by demographic as well. And I'm going to share that here in a little bit. Again, know your audience. That's real important, because you might be surprised. Some of them are LinkedIn, some of them are on Facebook, and you just kind of need to decide which or both you're going to do. A couple cons when it comes to LinkedIn. The first is, just like on Facebook, business pages don't show in the algorithm very well. Your personal feed still does. So I share all of my content in both places. So like this right now is live streaming in both places, so you can see it in both places. There is limited collaboration ability. LinkedIn doesn't have the same sort of groups, two-way conversation type thing that Facebook does. It's trying to get there. I think that it will, but it doesn't have sort of the same foothold in collaborative groups that Facebook has. The other con for LinkedIn is the ads are really hard to run. Their UI or their user interface to create ads is so complex and so hard to figure out. I've been doing advertising for years. I could get on Facebook and figure it out in 5 minutes. I literally spent hours trying to figure it out on LinkedIn and could not figure it out. I spoke to an ad expert because I was like, am I an idiot because I can't figure this out? She said, not at all. LinkedIn's interface to create ads is incredibly complicated. Also, the ad spend is very high on LinkedIn. If you want to do ads on LinkedIn, you're going to have a pretty big budget to make that happen. So that's a big con for me when it comes to LinkedIn. So who are the people who are on LinkedIn? Because I can tell you they're very different than the Facebook audience and very different from the other folks in other social media platforms. So let's dive into that. They're 18 to 64 with sort of an even split, right? We saw a slightly younger skew when it came to Facebook. This group has an average household income of $75,000 or higher. So this is a more affluent group versus the Facebook group, which is a little bit more distributed across all of the different income ranges. So it's something to think about depending on the sale price of your product line, right? If you're selling something that has a higher price point, LinkedIn is going to be great. If you're selling something, LinkedIn will be your best spot. You might not be able to sell that on Facebook because the majority of people on that platform who are, in a different income bracket is going to be more significant, right? So if you've got a higher end product, LinkedIn may be a better way to go because you've got folks with that income, disposable income to buy your product line. It's equally split between urban and suburban. Now that is different from Facebook because Facebook is equally split between urban, suburban, and rural. So if your product line is one that's selling more in a rural community, Facebook is going to be a better option for you than LinkedIn. LinkedIn is going to be more urban, so people live in the cities, and the suburbs sort of around the cities. There is sort of an equal identification between male and female, so about equal. Facebook actually has a slightly higher male. It's not that high, so I wouldn't, I wouldn't get too hung up on that, but both have about an even split of identification between male and female. The big difference, another big difference with LinkedIn is this community is college educated or more, right? Where on Facebook, we had a good mix of people at all income and all education levels. LinkedIn is going to be your more affluent community, so $75,000 and up household income, as well as college educated. So when it comes to knowing your audience, if that fits closer with your demographic, LinkedIn might be the place to go. LinkedIn is best for businesses selling to other businesses. So like I have a client right now, they are an HR consulting company. I actually have a few of those that I'm working with. So they're HR consulting. They want to sell their product lines to HR directors in larger companies, right? Companies that are 500 to 5,000 people. That community of HR directors is more likely to be networking on a LinkedIn than on a Facebook. If they have Facebook, they're probably using it for personal. So they're going to want to market more on LinkedIn. I'll give you another example. This is even an individual selling to an individual, but I have another client. Her name is Patty Franco. She's an amazing executive coach. But because she works primarily with executives, she found that most of those folks, they're not necessarily hanging out on Instagram or Facebook, but they are pretty active on LinkedIn. So she does the majority of her marketing on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is a great place if you're trying to get folks who are actively working in corporate America in a large company. Your best bet is LinkedIn as a place to connect with them, because that's where they're expecting to sort of meet new people and network. So I hope that this was helpful in helping you decide whether or not you need Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm happy to share these slides with you. Send me a direct message. I'll send it right over to you. I've got it saved as a nice PDF, and I'll send that right over to you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Every single Tuesday, I come live in all these same channels, and I talk about your questions. So if you send me a question, you can direct message me or you can email me. And if I answer your question on air, I've got these cool DD marketing cups, Yeti, or they're not Yetis, they're Arctics that you will get if I answer your question online. So that's every Tuesday at noon. And then generally every Wednesday around this time at noon or so, I come live and give you a presentation about what some of the trends are in marketing. I won't be here next week, but I will be here the week after. So send me a direct message if you have questions for a Q&A, and otherwise have a fabulous day. Mwah. Bye-bye.